Then to Professor Daniel Shaw, who teaches race, ethnicity, class and gender at the City University of New York. Professor Shaw, welcome back to RT. This is very much your field, of course. We're talking about a city of, what, 100,000 people. It's not a metropolis, and yet in 3 nights it's gone from a peaceful city to one where you've got armed civilians confronting protesters, the National Guard, federal law enforcement being involved. Is this how you feared it would escalate?
Yeah, no one was talking about Kenosha, Wisconsin 48 hours ago, but what happened to Jacob Blake is what's happened to how many unarmed, innocent black men, black families. His 3 children were witnesses to 7 bullets pumped into his back. What was his crime? He was walking to his vehicle. He was checking on his 3 children. And here we have the police brutalizing, humiliating, paralyzing, almost murdering him again. Upon decades and centuries of this happening, and the names of the police have not been released. So this is not a riot. This is a rebellion of upset people from Kenosha and across this country, demanding that there finally be justice.
Given the repeated scenes that we've had since the death of George Floyd, we're seeing it again and again and again. Should the authorities, A, have seen this coming, that it was going to flare up as much as it has in Kenosha, but equally, as you say, a lot of angry and upset people every time this happens? They can't just kettle that and stop protests from happening.
It's systematic, as we know. One day it's Minneapolis, another day it's Harlem, it's the Bronx, it's Oakland, now it's Kenosha. And what is the response of the system, particularly Trump and the federal government? They send more gasoline into the fire, if you will, by sending National Guard troops. They don't put a curfew on police brutality. They put a curfew on the rebellion, on the protests. And then, of course, the media, specifically Fox, plays its own role by constantly criminalizing and vilifying the protesters. And that's what this 17-year-old young fascist, wannabe police officer, former cadet of the Wisconsin police, who showed up last night looking to spread havoc and murder, and ultimately murdering 2 protesters and shooting another. And then he walked right by the police. He was late. He was just picked up about an hour and a half ago. But this sends a clear message that these fascist elements, these white supremacist militia elements, can show up at these protests and harass and kill people as well.
And what about in terms of the police? If it's as endemic, as if there's this institutionalized problem with the way police conduct themselves in the United States, is it too far gone to do anything about it? Or is it such a fragmented process across the country that it's difficult to deal with?
It's endemic, it's historical, it's institutionalized. And I think a lot of people on the other side of Fox News and even the liberal outlets, they don't get how bad it is. They haven't been on the ground to see just how the police roll into our communities, how they treat young black men and women. And the national statistics speak for themselves. Every 28 hours in this country, a black person is killed by law enforcement. So there's no question that it's systematic. But what the conservative media in particular has done is vilified the protesters without vilifying who is responsible for these rebellions. And that's the police, who constantly protect the rich, the billionaires, the suburbs, the white suburbs, but don't protect everyday people, working class people, poor people, black people, immigrant people. So we see these class lines and these racial lines being drawn as they have been for 500 years of American history.
And it's certainly lining up to being another difficult night in Kenosha. For now, Professor Daniel Shaw in New York, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's